When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hello and welcome to Want to Hear Something Weird? A weekly weird podcast about weird stuff. I'm one of your normal hosts, Tom.
And I'm one of your weird hosts, Laura.
Well, you're the weird host this week.
I am.
Wow. Well, that really doesn't track because I'm the one who brought the weird story today.
Wow.
But maybe you're going to react in a real weird way.
Should that be? That's true. I have no idea what you brought me. Should that be our thing, though? The one who's telling the story is the weird one, and the one hearing the story
No, I think the one hearing the story has to be the weird one.
Well, that's what's happening this week.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
what I'm saying. I think we've stumbled on what the format should be. Who should be weird and who should be normal each week.
And now we have a very organized podcast with a
yep, that's it.
clear agenda.
Now it's very organized.
Finally, it's happened.
This weird story this week falls in one of my favorite buckets of weird stories. This is a story about a weird man.
Okay. Weird men could go several
true.
ways.
Yeah. This guy seemed...
It depends. Are others harmed in the weird man's weirdness or not?
Well, that's an interesting question because if you ask anyone, including law enforcement, they would say no. But if you ask this man, he would say, unfortunately, yes, he has hurt people.
Well, now I'm very intrigued.
Because this man his name, he's no longer with us. His name is Ted Owens. Okay. But he was also known as the PK Man.
Letter P?
Letter P,
K?
letter K. Okay. So as in like psychic powers. The PK is often used as an abbreviation for like psychic. So he's the psychic man, the PK man.
All right.
You've heard of the X-Mans. Well, this is the PK
I've
man.
heard of the X-Men.
X-Men, X-Mans. Same difference. So this guy, Ted Owens, PK man, he was born in 1920. He died in 1987. So he's been gone for a while now. But so he's born in the 20s. He grew up during the Great Depression, and he was sent to go live with his grandparents, which apparently was fairly common at the time. But what was not common was that his grandparents had a lot of interests in psychic abilities, the paranormal, all that kind of stuff. They were real into like paranormal games and like seances and Ouija boards because that was like a real big fad at the time.
Oh, interesting.
I think in the 30s. I think it was during the Depression.
Huh. I didn't know that.
That was like a big. I learned that when we did an episode about the Ouija board. Because that's when Ouija boards, spirit boards became like a big thing.
Oh, on your other podcast?
On my other podcast, which
The Complete
will
Guide to Everything.
remain nameless.
I'll name it.
But yeah, I think that it was, I'm trying to remember what actually people like speculated the connection between a depression and a bunch of people being interested in the spiritual world. Maybe just the idea of escaping the reality they were in, that, there's more than this. Everything seems awful right now, but there's a whole other realm and maybe things are okay there. His grandma was also known for finding lost objects. Very good at that. And also predicting deaths. Oh. And his grandfather was a dowser. You know those guys?
Oh, the little metal pipe
with
things?
the
rods.
Metal, the rods or the sticks where you try and find water by walking around with them.
Oh, okay.
What did you think?
Ghosts. You're finding ghosts with them.
You can douse for ghosts as well, I believe. You can douse for a lot of things, but ultimately it's it's hooey. It's nonsense. It's, not an actual thing. It's a paranormal belief that some people have. Anyway, this guy, the PK man, he's mostly known from this book called The PK Man, A True Story of Mind Over Matter by Jerry Mishlove. That's kind of how he rose to notoriety. And I should mention, I learned about this because I'm reading a book called Real Magic by Dean Radin.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused with the guy with the hat from Mortal Kombat. Different Radin. But he has a story about a bunch of it's about the idea that magic potentially exists in the world, and it's just an area of science we don't understand yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he classifies that as like ghosts, paranormal activity, psychic abilities, all these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So he talks about this guy because he talks about him as a Merlin level magician in real life. So this guy, Jeffrey, decides to write about him because this guy, Ted Owens, is mad. He's writing to the government about things that are going to happen, and nobody's taking him seriously, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts writing to different researchers and reporters, basically saying, hey, here's what I'm going to predict. Like, I'm sending this to you so you can be some kind of proof to me. This is what Jeffrey said in his book. This is what Ted said to Jeffrey in a letter.
Okay.
I think this is what really convinced him. In the interest of science, I'm going to give a demonstration of my Psi-Force abilities to the people who live in the San Francisco area, 100 miles in circumference, using San Francisco as the bullseye of my target. As of today and daily for the following 90 days, I will telepath to living entities in another dimension for them to appear in the above target area so that they may be seen by police, scientists, or other responsible observers who are qualified to report the sightings. Also for them to cause electromagnetic and magnetic anomalies within the above described area. It is my intent to produce not one, but at least 3 major UFO sightings as described above within the above named time period to be reported in the newspapers in order for the experiment to be a valid one. So he predicted right before the time period started that there would be a blackout in San Francisco. And sure enough, like a few days later, San Francisco had 2.5 weeks later, had one of the worst windstorms ever, 70 mile per hour winds, causing a massive blackout. 100,000 homes were left without power. And because it was Thanksgiving weekend, it also took a while for them to fix.
Yikes.
Oh, yeah. He said San Francisco area would suffer power blackouts, perhaps massive ones, small and large power failures, and to put the icing on the cake that alien life forms would be seen in the target area.
So explicitly alien life forms, not just UFOs?
Yeah. I mean,
or are they using them interchangeably?
I think he's kind of using it interchangeably. On December 3rd, Owens told me over the phone that one of his predicted UFO sightings was about to occur within the next few days. He made a point of reminding me that the sighting would be seen by many reputable witnesses and may even be reported on the front page. The fulfillment of this specific prediction came on December 8th, when the best documented UFO sighting ever reported from the Bay Area startled hundreds of onlookers. From the front page of the Berkeley Gazette on December 10th, Stephanie Pawlowski, who, when permitting, creates aerial art by flying a stunt plane overhead while leaving trails of colored smoke, was startled Wednesday while performing over Cal State Sonoma. Pawlowski suddenly became aware of a circular white object only 1,000 feet away. The event was also captured by Channel 9 TV cameras. And Pawlowski said videotape reruns check out and confirmed the existence of a curious co-pilot in the sky. And that was on, the front page of the newspaper.
What about what time was it? What year?
1976.
Okay.
Was when this happened.
Wow.
But he had a lot of other predictions. These were just kind of the predictions that he made to get this guy's attention, that he's
Right,
basically
okay.
like, look, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to cause blackout. Like San Francisco is going to have a bunch of weird problems for, the next 90 days. And I'm going to be the one who did it.
Hmm.
I should.
So he's saying he has the power to make these things happen, not that he's predicting things that are happening.
Yeah. So that's another place where it got a little confusing, because I think in the beginning he did claim that these were predictions.
Okay.
But then later he was like, no, I'm not making predictions. Like, I'm telling the higher level beings to do this, and they're doing it. That's how I know it's going to happen, because I am actually the one kind of in charge here. I'm the one calling the shots. And I told these guys I want a blackout in San Francisco. And they say, yeah, sure. Why not? That's why we came from another dimension to help this guy cause weather problems in San Francisco. But hey, look, that's what he did. He also claimed that he got all this stuff happened because he was able to communicate with entities that I believe he originally thought they were aliens, but then later was like, no, they're from a different dimension. They're not from a different place in space.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Yeah.
And he claimed that they abducted him and operated on him and gave him this ability.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, apparently he had a very weird indent in the back of his skull, near the base of his skull, that other people had, saw or felt in some way, witnessed.
I don't like that.
Yeah. And, verified at least, like, oh, that is weird. I've never seen somebody with like that type of indent there. Obviously they couldn't prove that there was some kind of implant. I believe he also underwent like MRIs and his brain was normal.
Okay.
I don't believe he claimed that there was an implant, actually. I think he just claimed like they did a surgery on him to make him
made some
able
tweaks.
to communicate with them more easily.
Huh.
He also had a 150 IQ. 140 is considered genius. Now, what was interesting about this was that he had no formal education outside of, high school, I believe. I'm not even sure if he finished high school, honestly, but he did not attend college or anything like that yet. It was apparently a very smart man.
Wow.
And I just barely scratched the surface of the stuff that he said he did. I've got some more, as well as some things he tried to do that didn't work out.
Does he ever describe what it's like when he gets these ideas or these thoughts? Is he hearing, a voice in his head? What does he ever talk about that?
Not really. He just refers to it as telepathic communication.
Oh, okay.
With space intelligences, he calls them. And that I think this is maybe the first time he interacted with them, that he saw a cigar-shaped UFO in Texas in 1955. And according to him, the space intelligences telepathically explained to him that he was chosen to be their prophet. I'm an experiment with them to find out how much of the PK power a human being can absorb and stand. It took them literally ages to find a human being, myself, with whom they could communicate back and forth. Later, he would compare himself with Moses, which isn't a great look, but this is from sci-encyclopedia.spr.ac.uk. I don't have an author here, but that's where it's from. This website has a lot of his claims on it.
Oh, okay.
And various other things. Do you also know, that guy, J. Allen Hynek?
No.
He's like he was a big guy in the UFO community. And he said that at a scientific meeting about the Owens case that the original author convened in 1978, Hynek said he considered Owens' power to be subconscious in nature and that therefore he, quote, wouldn't go near him with a 10-foot pole. So he basically thought like, yeah, this guy is the real deal, but he's misunderstanding like what his ability is and where it's coming from. So he's not a safe person to be around, basically, because he's wielding this power that he doesn't actually understand how he's using.
Yeah, that's very
Also,
eerie.
I found out that J. Allen Hynek's son designed the camouflage in the Predator movie, which is pretty crazy. He's a Hollywood special effects guy.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway, so Mishlove, the original author, he identifies 4 researchers who are open to, talking with Owens. Like I said, Owens sent a lot of people letters, but it was clinical psychologist Leo Sprinkle, which kind of sounds like a Stephen Toast kind of name. Astronomer J. Allen Hynek, psychiatrist and parapsychologist Berthold Schwarz, and popular UFO author Otto Binder. So Sprinkle and Hynek eventually ceased corresponding with Owens due to his increasingly threatening approach to self-promotion. But here's some of the stuff. So, lightning strikes. According to a Philadelphia lawyer, Sidney Margulies, he and Owens were watching a rainstorm in the city in 1967. He has the date, when Owens offered to make a lightning strike any place Margulies chose. And he apparently succeeded, producing the only bolt in the rainstorm. Later, Kenneth Batch and Charles J., both of Merton, Pennsylvania, wrote in an affidavit that they had witnessed 3 lightning strikes directed near the town city hall after requesting that Owens produce them there, and another in a different area of the sky when they asked him to produce one there. Interesting.
It sure is.
Let me find, because this next one, I think I actually have the letter. Yes. Okay. So 2 things. He predicted Nixon's resignation, and this was published by Warren Smith in What the Seers Predict for 1971 and in Saga magazine the same year, before the Watergate scandal became public. Mishlove notes that no other American president had resigned or been forced out of office before. So that's like a pretty big prediction to make,
right?
When it's something that hadn't happened yet,
right?
He wasn't impeached or anything like that.
Conceptual, yeah. Wow.
But that wasn't the only thing Tricky Dick wound up mixed up in. Earlier, he wrote a letter to President Nixon in July 30th, 1969 that read, in part, "The CIS told me that there is a plot already underway, has been completely planned to kidnap you at your Key Biscayne residence in Florida." I know I'm like
butchering,
and it's like a normal word that I've heard a million times. But anyway, the bad guys, Cubans, know how well protected you are, but they are going to strike at night by water with fast boats with a highly skilled commando group of 50 to 100 men. The letter was signed Ted Owens, the PK man. Now, the Miami Herald, 3 weeks later, carried the headline, "Spy Plot Shatters Prospects for Renewing U.S.-Cuba Ties." After revealing that Fidel Castro's UN diplomats doubled as spies, the text stated the U.S. public is likely to consider the recruitment of spies for a mission relating to presidential security very much more seriously than guerrilla activities in a faraway land. There was, according to some reports, a James Bond touch to the recruitment plot. These reports claim the plan was to study President Nixon's movements at his Key Biscayne home using scuba divers as part of the surveillance team. So that's pretty crazy.
That is pretty crazy.
There was another warning, but this was earlier. This he sent to LBJ. He sent him a letter warning that a plane loaded with explosives would be flown deliberately into the White House or Johnson's Texas ranch, and that the pilot would be an ex-Army flyer or serviceman. Interestingly, almost exactly a year later, the New York Times reported a former Air Force pilot had been jailed pending sentence because of an alleged threat to plunge a plane into the White House.
So it didn't actually happen, but
Which is interesting because especially like this book that I'm reading about magic.
I almost. I'm sorry to stop you.
No.
But when I was listening to that,
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting at the edge of my seat, like, did a plane fly into the White House? And I was like, wait a minute, I would absolutely have heard about that.
Oh, you don't remember when LBJ was assassinated by a plane full of explosives flying into him? No, but what's interesting, like I've been on a real psychic kick lately, I guess, reading about this kind of stuff. And there have been experiments into this. These experiments that are described in this book, Real Magic, I kind of couldn't even wrap my head around. But they were doing experiments that I'm trying to figure out how to even explain it because I didn't understand it. But they were doing experiments not only to see if somebody could predict the future, but if they were predicting based on like probability of the future. So they had a random number generator generating numbers, but there were like a few different stages to it. And like if one thing happened at one stage, that would change the odds of the next stage. But basically what they found was that there was a little bit of a link that seemed to suggest like a lot of times what psychics, or soothsayers, prophets, mediums. Well, I guess more with like people predicting the future. That they are seeing a probable future, but not necessarily the one that is going to happen, which also makes you, wonder in at least these two cases, like, did this letter get to the right person? Because even though it seems like a letter from a nutcase, it still got to somebody who's like, we should, tighten up security or at the, president's home in Florida or whatever. And that wound up leading to something. But I find it almost more interesting that he predicted these things were going to happen and they didn't happen, but they were foiled. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So he also, and this is what I'm talking about when I say, that maybe he didn't always use his powers for good. One time he got mad at Cleveland.
The whole city?
The whole city. On May 30th, 1972, there was a disappointing reception to his claims in Cleveland. I guess, I don't know if there was like an article in the paper or he was supposed to do like a talk there and didn't sell enough tickets or something like that. He was pissed. So he wrote to several contacts saying he would wreak destruction on the city in the form of heat, drought, and people acting strangely. He told another friend that there would be electrical disturbances, lightning storms, plane crashes, and shipping accidents. He later also predicted odd animal behavior, high winds, and blackouts. That summer, lightning caused 3 fatalities and an unusual amount of damage, including a blackout. A week-long heat wave was blamed for an unusually high number of people claiming to, quote, hear the voice of God, receive messages from outer space, or be secret agents on secret missions phoning City Hall. So he said, I'm going to make the people act weird, and there were people acting weird, and they blamed the heat wave for it rather than him. But there you go. 3 people died from the lightning strike. So, he's got blood on his hands. There's some more weather stuff. Chicago chaos in a letter dated the 8th of October, 1975. He wrote a radio announcer in Chicago. I guess this announcer wrote to him saying like, hey, can you demonstrate this ability you have on the radio shows? So he said, yeah, sure. He said he would cause UFO sightings and that they would be accompanied by people doing strange things. There'd be electromagnetic anomalies, poltergeist phenomena, equipment, and human errors at O'Hare Airport. Finally, he promised to sabotage the Chicago Bears football games for several months without anyone being hurt. Mishalev notes newspaper clippings reported a mysterious radio signal coming from a bridge in the city, the slaughter of animals by a UFO group in Oregon, unusual traffic jams at O'Hare, unusual weather and a disastrous season for the Bears, characterized by mishaps and ineptness. In 1977, he called the chief of police for Cape Charles, Virginia, and told him that he would bring a hurricane to the area. And 5 days later, an intense storm with high winds and golf ball-sized hailstones struck the coast, killing 5 people. And there's a bunch like this. I'm not going to go through them all, but there's a lot of stuff like this, a lot of predictions of droughts and hurricanes that then happened, a lot of sports stuff.
Stuff that, is he talking specifics, like location, like specific teams if it's sports stuff?
He's naming teams.
Okay.
You know, the teams he's mad at, I guess. But a lot of the other stuff, I mean, I guess with like San Francisco, that was him like calling his shot there. It's going to be, you know, make San Francisco a bullseye and extend out, 50 miles in all directions. That's where I'm going to make weird stuff happen, which also, seems to imply that he doesn't have crazy control over these abilities. But sometimes he does, because he was also able to make lightning strike precise targets when he was with people. So maybe it has something to do with how far away he is. There's also another incident. One late evening, the author here received a phone call from Owens angrily warning that the government must cancel the next space shuttle flight. This is the most important call you will ever receive, Michelov recalled Owens saying. The SI, Space Intelligences, really mean business. They will destroy the shuttle. It's up to you to prevent it. Then just a month later, the Challenger exploded.
Wow.
And that was the first fatal accident involving an American spacecraft in flight at the time. So again, he was predicting something that hadn't happened before, ahead of time.
Right.
And it was, in that case, unfortunately, right. I think he said that the Space Intelligences were going to do it, though, not that it would be like an accident or whatever. Yeah. And then
they do it and make it look like an accident.
Maybe. The last story I have here about him that I thought was funny. One case Michelov cited in his book. Let me shout out the website that this is coming from, because this is from apmagazine.info, which was like, Associated Press magazine. No, Alternate Perceptions magazine. Much more interesting stuff. So they say that one of the other things in this book by Michelov, which I'm probably just going to have to read, was a series of events that happened when a Maine real estate agent and other local businessmen in Brewer, Maine, invited Ted Owens to come and demonstrate his reported abilities to make UFOs appear. In July 1968, Ames allowed Owens and his family to come and stay at his lakeside lodge for a few days just outside of town, located at Eddington Pond. I wonder what that guy's wife had to say about this. Like if he didn't tell her, and then this guy oh, yeah, I wrote a letter to this guy who said he can make UFOs appear in the sky, and told him he can come vacation with us at our lake house if he wants. Not only did UFOs appear several times, but there were recurrent monster incidents inside and outside of the lodge, along with poltergeist-type activity. In one dramatic episode during daytime, Ted and his wife heard an explosive noise outside, and then their young son, Bo, screaming. Rushing outside, they found their son hysterical, claiming a giant black figure had tried to pick him up.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's, again, what J. Allen Hynek was after, that he's like, don't mess with, you don't actually understand what you're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't, use it as a way to get free vacations, because a monster from another dimension might come and steal your kid.
I would err on the side of caution if I ever met someone who claimed those things.
I mean, at least don't let them stay with you.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, be like, oh, well,
whether they could actually do it or not. Both
both
scenarios, no
right.
thanks.
Meet that guy at a Starbucks You don't need him you don't have him come where your son is and then monsters come and they try and take your son. Anyway, that's all for this week. That's the weird story for this week. If you like the show, tell your friends. How about that? How about leaving a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? Those both help massively. And if you have a weird story you'd like to tell us about, email us, wannahearpod@gmail.com. You can send either a voice note or you can just send a regular old-fashioned typed email.
Mm-hmm.
You can handwrite a letter, take a picture of it and send it. We'll accept that too. Your
would.
handwriting has to be neat enough that we can read it though. And you can follow us on social media at wannahearpod. Any closing thoughts on the PK man?
You know, I'm not totally on the side of him being just a wacky guy.
No, I don't think so. I think he may have been able to tap into something that he didn't completely understand. I mean, maybe he understood it better than we do, but that kind of does seem like there was something there. But one of the other big problems with him was that he would retroactively claim that he knew a lot of stuff.
Okay.
You know, like something would happen. Will Smith slaps Chris Rock and, I knew that was going to happen. It's like, well, that doesn't do you any good now. And also that, he sent a lot of angry letters to a lot of very important people.
Yes.
But again, I could see if you have these psychic abilities and the government doesn't want your help.
Yeah, I think it would kind of drive you nuts.
And you want to give it to them. Yeah, that would be very frustrating.
Yeah.
You got to try and hide if this guy had lived a little longer, he would have seen the X-Men movies. And then he would have known.
Second time.
You have to hide your abilities, and then the government will come to find you. They'll seek you out. All right. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.
Want to Hear Something Weird is a Clamor audio production, distributed by the Cloud 10 Network. Hosted and executive produced by Tom Reynolds and me, Laura Anderson. Executive produced by Aaron Hilliard.
Clamor General Manager Rich Statter, Associate Producer Ethan Aronson, Post-Production Supervised by Devin Ruskin, Production Assistant Samara Mullick. Special thanks to Sim Sarna and Saiba Krieger at Cloud 10.